Question number 4, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, is he confident that more than 85% of Meridian Energy remains owned by New Zealanders?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the government's successful float of Meridian Energy resulted in New Zealand ownership of 86.5%, exceeding the government's target. I've had no updates since then, but I am aware that the New Zealand shareholding in Mighty River Power has actually increased, and there's no reason to think the same won't happen with Meridian.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he aware that one overseas investment bank, the Bank of New York Mellon, bought 5% of Meridian in the days following its float on the stock market? And isn't it likely that that single overseas buyer has taken New Zealand ownership below his 85% limit?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I don't have specifics on who that company bought their shares from, but I have received some advice that as far as Meridian can tell, they believe that that purchaser was purchasing shares from offshore investors.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, given that the Minister isn't exactly sure where the shares have come from, isn't it a fact that by taking ownership of an extra 5% of Meridian, the Bank of New York Mellon may well have reduced New Zealand ownership to as low as 81%, well below his 85% limit?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, no.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Didn't the Minister know all along that once the shares in Meridian were sold, that they would quickly start to fall into foreign ownership, just as happened with Contact Energy, and that the 85% New Zealand ownership limit that he talked about at great length was simply spin, a bit like the mums and dads spin that he talked about?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, no. I've already indicated to the member that information has been made available to the Minister which makes it clear that the New Zealand shareholding in Mighty River Power has increased since it was floated. We know that in another mixed ownership model type company, the Port of Tauranga, it is the New Zealanders buying out the overseas interests. The only question I'd ask, if the member is suggesting that he himself is buying Meridian shares, then I suppose foreign ownership would be increasing.
A bit more immigrant bashing from the Minister.
Order.
Wonderful.
Order.
Supplementary.
Order. 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 I'd say the score's about 1-1.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he comfortable with the fact that, at its current level of investment, the Bank of New York Mellon will receive $18 million in dividends from Meridian next year, paid for by the power bills of New Zealand families?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, I'm comfortable that those people who have bought shares in Meridian Energy are entitled to receive the dividends that they will qualify for. It would be interesting if the Greens were promising not to allow those people to receive their dividends, and we're still awaiting Mr. Norman's pledge to buy back the shares. He was rather all over the place this morning on the radio, I thought.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister accept that it is difficult for the Greens and others to promise to buy back the shares because the government has completely crashed the books by borrowing $60 billion? And when this government borrows $60 billion and we have no idea what a catastrophe they might leave us next year, it makes it difficult to make that kind of a promise.
Honourable. Order. Order. Honourable Tony Ryall.
Well, that's a new position. Having spent most of the time for the last 2.5 years saying that the books of the country go backwards through the asset sales process, he's now trying to stand up and say that he can't project what's going to happen. He can't have it both ways. If he thinks the government's books go backwards because of this, then he should make the pledge to buy these assets back.
Order.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has the Minister actually read Treasury's budget policy statement 2012 and 2013, which shows that the deficit, the operating balance excluding gains and losses, and for the Minister's benefit, that's how they measure it, that the deficit increases as a result of his asset sales program? Treasury project it will increase by $180 million over 5 years, but given the poor showing by this government, it will probably increase by $500 million.
That's going to be a very lengthy question.
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, over the period the matter is relatively balanced. What the member fails to appreciate is that there is risk. There is risk associated with these businesses, and the fact is we have converted some of that risk into cash for New Zealand taxpayers. $4 billion that we don't need to borrow from overseas bankers. And if that party opposite truly believed what he just asked in his question, they would promise now to buy back those assets. They would promise to borrow that money because that would be better for New Zealand according to his logic. But I noticed that in the last day he's been changed.
Order. Now the answer is getting very long. Question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Thank you.